The Red Bull situation was that the Verstappen camp and Red Bull thought that I was saying that it was them who had done anything wrong, which maybe I just wasn't clear enough by saying that it was Michael Massey and the FIA who had not stuck to their rules.
Ted Kravitz!
Got some cheese?
The man with probably the most famous notebook in the world.
Welcome to the Race Notebook.
With over 20 years in Formula One, present your detailed insights,
Slushy.
thoughts and reactions to one of the most complex sports in the world.
Oh, they touched!
Sat next to the current drivers in Eurofighter Typhoons upside down in the sky.
I don't recommend this, but
Did you come up with the idea of Ted's notebook?
it wasn't my idea. I don't even buy my own notebooks.
One word caused a team to be very angry. What does that do to you, the aftermath of that? Ted Kravitz, the man with probably the most famous notebook in the world. With over 20 years in Formula One, for many weekends of the year, you present your detailed insights, thoughts and reactions to one of the most complex sports in the world. But Ted, in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Hello, nice to be here. How are you? I like the van. We should probably explain a bit why we're here, because there is a story. Who am I? I'm a pit lane reporter
In Formula One.
in Formula One. Yes. Well, I mean, that's my job. So I've written a book about it. F1 Insider, Notes from the Pit Lane, we are here because when I couldn't be a pit reporter in the pits, this is where I came and did my reporting. Do you remember the lockdown notebooks?
No.
Okay. Well, I can understand. COVID was a difficult time for everybody.
I wasn't
trying to forget it.
I have to admit, I think Drive to Survive was compassing everything around me during lockdown.
Okay.
It was the thing that captivated my additional
Well, that's good.
passion.
It was easy. It was easy to miss. So when the Australian Grand Prix was cancelled in 2020, then we all came back to the UK. Having been in Australia, Formula One was off, and we at Sky Sports F1 had to pivot quite quickly to how we could service our audience, who were all stuck at home, obviously, with a new way of working. And so I offered, as I talk about, I think in chapter 18, I offered my producers a kind of weekly roundup of what was going on, because there was still stuff happening in Formula One. Sebastian Vettel was announced that he was leaving Ferrari and joining Aston Martin. And Carlos Sainz was on the move as well. And I came here to the only place that we were allowed to do. Do you remember there was the daily exercise? You're allowed to do some daily exercise, 1 hour of daily exercise. And because of social distancing, I had to be my own cameraman. So I had to hold no Lee or Pete. I had to hold a camera on the end of a selfie stick and just be my own cameraman. And happily, some people watched it and found it interesting, which I'm very grateful for. And I did it around this park, just off Caledonian Road in North London. And that's why we're here.
And what would your notes be on?
So I started right over there, and there was a Fiat 500 in sort of Italian colours with an Italian stripe down the side. And I thought, great, that is an opportunity to do the Sebastian Vettel story. So you're always kind of looking for bits that you can use, bits that are around. And I do that in the pit lane every day. Use opportunities. If you see something happening or there's a big crowd, you'll start and say, oh, they're here to see Ferrari, or they're here if it's a Monza, or there's only one show in town, or McLaren the quickest, the most popular team here in Austin or wherever it is. So yeah, you always use what's around you. So it wouldn't have been about anything really.
Very quickly, some eagle-eye viewers of Road to Success may notice this week that we are missing one of our normal camera angles that looks across at the guest, taking the main part of the face. We've still got the side camera angle, and this has worked really well for this episode. We actually managed to somehow delete two main camera angles. They just went missing from the episode, but Toby has done a fantastic job, my lead editor, of recovering the footage off a deleted SD card. We've gone above and beyond this week. I hope you still enjoy this episode. I just wanted to clear up why that one camera angle is missing. As much as you say,
I'm just a pit lane reporter. There is so many, if you write that in the center of a page or a notebook, so many things that come off that to make you good at doing what you do. And many people in the world have to be told what to do as part of their jobs. And then a set percentage of people are very creative. And like, you have to come up with so much stuff in real time on the go of like, you always been that way. Like even at school, were you taking notes? Were you a creative? Has that always been inside you?
Well, it's very kind of you to say, but I mean, I think at school I was always interested in numbers, even though I wasn't particularly good at maths. I think I talk about this in chapter 2, where I found sort of comfort in numbers, and I like to pre-internet. This is a long time ago. The internet didn't exist.
Because you came into F1 in 1996.
Yes, but this was growing up when I was in sort of 1990, something like that. So when I was growing up, and I just thought, I like to look at the qualifying results, and then I would build my own picture from the numbers and the gaps and what had happened. And that was the way that I really got into it. So while I wasn't in terms of, being sort of looking to be told if relating to your question, what to do, that was what got me into it, was some of the process and the discipline and the numbers and everything. So that's what I found interesting. And I still do it to this day. So I'll look at the numbers of a lap time or there was a race, I can't remember where, I think it was in Baku, which is quite a long circuit. And everybody was within almost 1 second, the whole field. I think it was a practice session. And the quickest time was a 1:29.1 and the slowest time was a 1:30.1. And I just looked at it and it made sense to me. And I quite liked that symmetry of those numbers. So that
comes from knowledge over a prolonged period of time, because the more times that you witness something, the more times you see something, the more times it builds on our memory, and we're able to make these little differences and see things a lot easier than somebody else that's done it for the first time. So if I take it back to your first memory of a race, what would that be? What was your first significant memory of Formula One?
I mean, in the flesh, it was a... do you mean in the flesh or watching on TV?
Well, anything significant to you?
I think... I mean, I used to watch, Grand Prix through the 1980s, but in the flesh, I guess it was about 91, 92 when I went down in the London Evening Standard, which I think still exists as a free newspaper, but you had to buy it back then. There was a voucher in the paper for a Brands Hatch race day with Lotus Formula One, and Johnny Herbert and Mika Hakkinen would be there. And so I went down on the train and got to the track, and I saw the Lotus, the transporters, and they were always gleaming and shiny and clean. And this one Lotus Ford got wheeled out the back, and I was like, whoa, what is this? And Mika Hakkinen was hanging around. No one was bothering him because nobody really knew who he was. And Johnny Herbert was the star attraction. And I went up to Mika Hakkinen. I was like, for an autograph, and he just handed me this autograph card, which he hadn't signed. He was just sitting on this this toolbox, handing out autographs, unsigned autograph cards. I was like, oh, thank you very much, Mika. And then Johnny Herbert did a couple of laps in the Lotus Ford, and the sound of that really, really hooked me.
So that was the first time that you probably were like, this is really cool.
This was really cool. And then watching, I guess, sort of that in 1992 season with Nigel Mansell doing a really great job for Williams Renault, and then there was the Monaco Grand Prix where he made a pit stop, came out behind Ayrton Senna, and Senna was always my idol. And then I was jumping up and down on my sofa in the living room, and I thought, okay, it's a funny old game, this Formula One. This can really make people react this way, because it's making me react this way. It's very exciting. And so, yeah, by that time I was well and truly hooked.
At that precise moment, if I could put that Ted at that time in the van opposite me now.
Right.
And I told him that entry, that passion, that spark could lead to be sat next to the current drivers in Eurofighter Typhoons upside down in the sky.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
And touring markets with the drivers, understanding about their culture and local food, and everything else that's come from, as you call it, a pit lane reporter. What would that Ted say?
I'd probably say to myself, didn't you want to go into radio? Which is what I was thinking of at the time. Or didn't you want to go into journalism? How have you ended up here then? Because that was what I thought I'd do. So even at a young age, I liked the immediacy, the intimacy of radio, which is why I like doing podcasts like this with good microphones. And I was blessed with an okay voice, and I just liked the way radio connected you with your listeners, and you didn't have to worry about shaving in the morning. You didn't have to worry about ironing your shirt or what you wore. Because I said, no, I know, but I can just claim it's a linen shirt and that's the way it is. But I have just not ironed it. But linen shirts do go like this. And I loved radio. I loved it when between the ages of 9 and 14. I was just sort of addicted to radio, talk radio, music radio, and thought this is what I want to do. And so, the young me would say, what about that job? I thought you were going to try and get in radio. What are you doing in this?
So would you even consider it? I know radio is so different to what you do now, but it's also live.
Yes, because in the race, I am just out of vision, and I am
the box that comes up on screen.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't, I'm not in, I'm just doing a lot of the time when I'm doing my reports, I'm looking elsewhere and I'm doing this and I'm waving my hands about and people can't see it because it's in the middle of the race and you're watching the main race feed. So it is a little bit, it's still like radio, which pleases me. Sorry, you were going to ask a question.
Has everything from your earliest days of starting out there always been live? Because one of the first guests I actually ever recorded with was Jake Humphrey.
Oh, right.
And Jake would talk about the enormous difference in pressure that he experienced between kind of studio-based work and live work and like how different the two were. But was your first kind of knowledge, have you only really known live from the beginning?
Yes. I mean, we mix it up. Obviously, I do lots of recorded stuff and we do finely crafted features, and we've done plenty of recorded programs, season review programs or Christmas programs or whatever stuff has been recorded. But then there's a discipline and immediacy and actually a connection that you make with your audience when you're live that I kind of like. And I don't know whether Jake said, but you do become a bit addicted to the sort of thrill of live TV, and Jake was very good with that, and had come from lots of recorded programs, both on kids TV and then in football at BBC Sport. And then he would get nervous. We all get nervous. You get more nervous when you're doing live TV. I think the moment you stop being nervous, you should probably stop doing it, because
can you feel like the pressure inside you, like a pressure cooker sometimes, and there's so much going on around you? Or is that the moment that you tend to excel in? Like, for argument's sake, I've seen some of the busiest times that you do the notebook is in moments like when there's a team photo or someone's just won the Constructors' Championship, like McLaren this week. Yeah. And like, is that the times where you almost feel like you excel the most, is when there's the most going on?
Yeah, that's the time when you have to get it right and remember to hit all of your talking points. So that's the pressure in that you need to know what to start with, and you need to have thought about where you're going to end, because that is the throwback to, you can't just finish what you're saying and saying, Simon, back to you, although we do that sometimes. It's best to kind of have a thought, have an arc around to the end, which is that, I don't know, Alex Albon's brakes are on fire or something, and you're going to have to make it that this is not a thought, that this is not the way that Williams wanted the weekend to start, or something like that. And then you need to have something to say in the middle, not outstay your welcome, keep it short, and get all the points across. You don't want the camera to go off and think, oh, I forgot to say that. And that's the pressure in I wouldn't say it's a pressure cooker, but that's the pressure in trying to get everything in. And when you get everything in and you go off air and you think, oh, I managed to hit all my points, I got everything across, then you're happy.
Every single guest I have on this podcast has something in common with you. We are all humans. We all get stressed. And sometimes we all just need to admit we need a little help. Over the 110 episodes I've recorded of Road to Success, I've heard so many stories of how my guests have had to overcome mental and physical challenges to get to where they are today. I'd say stress is the number one thing I have to cope with on a day-to-day basis, running multiple businesses and employing staff. But stress can sometimes, for myself and my guests, be caused by a financial burden. It can be caused by heartbreak or even workload, and you don't want it to manifest in the wrong way. You don't want to take it out on loved ones or friends. In 2021, I hit the lowest point of my life. It was just after I'd lost my dad to an unexpected heart attack. I'd lost my nan a few weeks later. And then I'd been thrown into a huge amount of debt. Being a natural born problem solver, I identified that I needed some therapy. I couldn't deal with this myself. I had to accept that I needed some help. So I tried therapy for the first time, and it's now become a tool that I use monthly all the way up to this present day. And that's why I've decided to partner with BetterHelp for this video. I'd say the biggest thing that I have learned from having therapy from someone that had never had it before is I never expected the role a therapist has in your life compared to others we have in our lives, like parents and friends and partners. A therapist has absolutely no agenda other than to open your mind. They don't take sides, and I guarantee if you've never spoke to a professional therapist before, you'd have never spoke to anyone like it in your life. And on BetterHelp, there are many tools at your disposal to help you begin to feel better. For therapy, you don't need to have any clinical mental health issue like anxiety or depression, but just think of it as a tool for personal growth. It can help you better understand yourself, cope with habits, and solve problems, leading to both mental and emotional well-being. Now, BetterHelp is on a mission to help you start therapy as easy as possible. It's a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively. This helps you get the most out of therapy. All you have to do is fill out a questionnaire on their site, and you will match with a number of therapists within a few days. There are thousands of reviews available on Trustpilot for you to go and read to show that BetterHelp is a platform that you can trust. So if you are struggling and looking for some help, I've left the link to BetterHelp in both the pinned comment and the description of this video. I promise this could be one of the most important taps of your life. Thank you to BetterHelp for partnering with me on this video.
Or it's the other side of, I wish I didn't say that, right? Because your life, the difference between what we're doing now with the cameras and what you have to do, and I appreciate live in the pitlane, is if I said something that was slightly off piece to you, we could edit it out in relative sense. Like, just chop that bit and we carry on with the video. No viewer other than me, you, or Toby is the wiser. But on TV, if you step across that line live, there's no going back, really, is there?
Yeah. You tend not to get near the line, actually. I mean, you'd be surprised that you tend to go to 85, 90%, and then you tend never to go near the line for that reason, really. And that's where I think podcasts are good, in that people feel a bit more relaxed. Carlos Sainz was talking recently about the ability of podcasts to be able to have the time to explore more subjects in depth, and that's a nice thing to do. And but you will be able to tell when you watch us that if we're doing something, we'll make a broad reference to something that may or may not be controversial, and then we won't really go feet first into it. And the moment people hear, I don't know what the controversy, let's say there's a controversy over a front wing flexibility thing, and
or my favourite chapter in your book, chapter 20.
Oh, is that Abu Dhabi 21?
Yeah.
Right. Well, that was happening, at the time. So we didn't know, at the time, wow, how contentious.
Yeah, of course.
Not controversial.
No, in the moment, because everything's live.
Everything's live. And so we were trying to figure it out at the time. But no, it's you'll allude to the controversy, but bear in mind that we've also got people in our ears, saying, I mean, they don't need to say it because we know we've discussed where the line is, and we won't really go near it.
You see, one of my late father's favourite sayings that he had that will never leave me, and I genuinely use it pretty much every day in my businesses in my life, is, Ben, you can only keep some of the people happy some of the time. You can't keep all of the people happy all of the time. Do you have to kind of have a degree of that with what you're doing? Because you're dealing with so many emotions, so many teams, so many people. that do you kind of have to have an acceptance in journalism and doing what you're doing, that sometimes some of them will be happy and sometimes some of them won't at remarks?
I suppose so. I mean, your father was a wise man, but I would say that I try to keep most of the people happy all of the time. I don't set out to upset anyone I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinions and that's fine, but I'd like those to be based on the facts of what's actually happening. And if someone wants to have an opinion based on something that they don't really have any basis for, then absolutely fine. That's natural. But then I'm just at least happy that I've stuck to what I know is true.
But do you have to have skin almost like a rhinoceros to deal with maybe Formula One drivers and the pressure they can put back on you at times? Is it harder to deal with comments from like the drivers in the paddock than it is the general audience?
No, the drivers all just come at it from their point of view, and I think about that and understand that all the time. The team bosses as well. You know, they're all competitive, super competitive people, and they're coming at it from their point of view, so they want to put their case across. And sometimes the best thing for a reporter to do is to think in those terms, in that mind, and then put that as your first question, because that will often elicit the best response. So, I don't know, what would it be? Lando Norris winning Monaco. I mean, there wasn't any really sort of contentious element to that, but he was a bit sort of fed up with doing media. He'd just done the photo. He didn't really want to do an interview. And I could see that. And I just came up to him and I just thought, what must it be to him? He's just won the Monaco Grand Prix. He's a bit tired. He's just done the photo with the team. He doesn't really want to do an interview. He's already done here's me with a thing. So I put myself in his head and I just thought, what would he react well to? Or Oscar Piastri coming off crashing in Baku. I thought he doesn't really want to answer questions about why did you crash? Why did you crash in qualifying? Why did you crash in the race? Was that a consequence of the jump start? So I put myself in his head. And with Lando, I said, Monaco, you did it. And a little smile went on his lips and he was like, yeah, I did it. And then I knew I was aware and I could ask, about the strategy or whatever the boring question was next or whatever. And with Oscar, I had this idea last weekend after the Baku Nightmare to do, when you ring up some people and they say, can I just take you through some security questions, sir? What's your middle name? Yeah. What was the name of your first pet?
What's your mother's maiden name?
What's your maiden name? Exactly. Not hard for me because Kravitz is my mother's maiden name. I use her name. If anyone wants to try and get through my security questions. But I thought I had this idea to Oscar Piastri. It was like, okay, let's find out if we're talking to the real Oscar Piastri here. So let's ask him the security questions. And once we've established, you see where I'm going with this? But maybe not. Maybe it's a terrible idea, which is why I didn't use it in the end. It was like, okay, I was going to start. Oh, sorry, Mr. Piastri, can I just take you through some security questions? Can I have your mother's maiden name? Okay, good. Can I have the name of your first pet? Fluffles. Okay, great. Okay, now I'm dealing with the real, I'm satisfied I'm dealing with the real Oscar Piastri. Who was driving that car last week? And I was going to see what he thought. And then I thought, to go back to what you're saying, maybe I'll put myself in his head. And maybe he might think, oh yes, all very clever, Kravitz, but to you, that's a bit of a stupid, bit rude. It was me driving and I just made a mistake, all right? So I decided not to do that. So that's the way you try and mitigate any kind of sensitivities by seeing it from their point of view.
Do you sometimes think if I don't ask them now, if I leave them this time, that'll make the next 20 times I ask them better?
How do you mean in terms of
because
what difficult?
If one potential moment, right. So let's just take Max, very angry Max, yeah? Just a very angry Max.
Right.
And you think, I could either make him angrier, or speak to him, or he doesn't want to do any me, or
right.
I can just back off, not ask the question he was expecting me to ask and get a slightly tamer Max for the next 20 times I have him. Because you kind of had that little bit of extra respect.
Right. Well, I always have, there's no extra respect. I always have respect for everybody.
Not you and the other side, Max.
Yeah. But, it's just the job of if I'm the first person to get him, and he's done something that my viewers would want to know some more details about or an explanation for, then you've got to go with that first. You can find a different way of asking it. What was the one? There was one where he was told to give a place back and then he was angry about it.
There's a few of those.
Right. But then I wanted to go, I would have probably started with, you know, why do you think your team felt that what you needed to give the place back? Was there a kind of grey area of the rules where you thought you were okay because someone had clonked into you and then you clonked to someone, whatever it was? You know, is that something that started all this? And also so I'd probably start from there. And with, you know, the McLaren, can you swap back? That all started from a slow pit stop. And so I might start with, okay, what was the first point that this happened? And ease into it that way. Because then also you're looking at it from their point of view. You know, weird things that happen in Formula One, they always have a start point, which actually isn't that weird. So whether it's having to give a place back and then there's some consequences, or whether there's a slow pit stop and then you end up swapping the cars around, or whether there's a yellow flag and you go too fast over the yellow flag and get a 10-place grid penalty, there's always a little kernel, first of all, that I think is worth exploring. And then if you do that logically and always with respect, then you tend to get to the same place rather than just saying, why'd you do that?
There's drivers on the grid now that are, I'd say, more challenging than others to speak to an interview. And there's definitely been drivers in the past that would have been more challenging than others to speak to. I'm thinking maybe Kimi Räikkönen. Over your time, because we don't always appreciate the full amount of time that people do things for, unlike Fernando Alonso has been doing it for 100 years. But we don't appreciate that full amount of time. You've been in F1 over 20 years now. Who were the most difficult drivers and teams to kind of work with over that period?
I mean, again, it comes back to just understanding who they are and what they react to. So Michael Schumacher, what chapter is it I do, Michael? Schumacher is in chapter, here we go, 8 of F1 Insider, where I talk about, you know, the challenges of interviewing Michael Schumacher. And he always realized that an interview with anyone from the media wasn't going to make him or his car go quicker. And so he had to get something out of it. And if you look at it that way, all these drivers are very nice in giving us their time, because it's not something, doing a 2-minute interview with any reporter isn't going to get them more lap time, better lap time. So it's, you know, they're doing it because it's good for their teams, with the sponsors and everything. And it makes them connect with their public. That's really why they're doing it. We're just a sort of vessel to be used from them to put their point across to everybody watching. And so Michael always demanded excellence from his questions or questioners. And if you had thought of a good, well thought out question which engaged him and made him think and might give him some insight into some competitors or some way that he could further it on track, then that was always good for Michael. Kimi Räikkönen people misunderstood because I think half the time people were trying to get a one-word answer out of Kimi Räikkönen just to make it like a funny Kimi Räikkönen answer. And that's not, I never really liked to play that game because, I mean, sometimes we had a feature, I can't remember what year it was, which was, you know, best answers with Kimi Räikkönen or something. And then we had this, you know, interview gold with Kimi Räikkönen. It's like, Kimi, do you think you can win this weekend? Yes. You know, TV gold with Kimi Räikkönen. So if you're going to ask a closed question like that, then you know Kimi's going to give you a one-word answer. So you could go looking for that. But if you went, Kimi was actually quite a talkative guy. That's what people don't realize. And sometimes he'd give such long answers. I think, oh no, how am I going to edit this? You know, it's not going to fit in the feature I want this answer for. But you had to think about it, and you had to get him engaged. And sometimes he'd more often than not be wearing sunglasses when you spoke to him. And sometimes if he didn't think much of your question, he'd kind of watch back some videos. You'll see, he goes like that, sort of puts his nose in the air and puts his chin up, and then goes, I don't think so. But sometimes if he was engaged in your question, he'd just sort of stare at you behind those dark glasses. And then sometimes he'd sort of cock his head to the left. And then he'd also answer, boah. But you knew that then you got a good boah. And no, actually, that's wrong. The boahs were always, I don't think much of your question was a kind of boah, you know. We still get some boahs now again, don't we?
Yeah, I think he was such a kind of Iceman creature that no one is ever going to, and the videos go so viral to this day for new fans, that no one is ever going to forget what he was like. But what he was like at the core of his brain is what a lot of Formula One drivers, teams, team principals, and anyone within the garages are like, which is they're quite self-competitive. At the end of the day, every weekend, a bit like Oscar having a poor weekend, he's competing with himself the next weekend. You guys, despite the fact that so many of you are so humble that come and sit opposite me and talk, but you've done so many cool things and so many cool experiences and got to a really, really cool position with doing a piece of work that a lot of others would want to do. Are you ever self-critical after a race? Like, would you have come down on the plane on the way back? Do you think, do you know what? That was good. That was me at my best this weekend. Yeah. Or, do you know what? I was a bit, I wish I'd done it that way. Are you quite self-critical? Are you quite level?
No, every 10 minutes I'm constantly self-critical. That's the only way. That's the only way you learn. You have to watch back your pieces to see, I would have done that differently and done that differently. Oh, maybe I should have said that there. Because that's another thing I talk about in the last chapter, actually, when I say that very few sports have such high demands of their participants than Formula One. You expect to be teams, the media, the fans expect drivers to be perfect every session, every lap of every day of every race. And none of us really hit those perfection marks in our day-to-day, present company accepted. None of us hit perfection every day, but we try to. But when Formula One drivers don't hit perfection, it gets noticed by everybody. All their teams are micro-analyzing all of their laps, and the fans will see, why was Yuki Tsunoda there, or that far behind Max, or whatever. Why was Carlos in front of Alex? Why was Ollie Behrman in front of Esteban? Or what happened to Esteban Ocon this weekend? Whatever it is, it gets noticed. And if you don't notice your own performance, then you're not doing it right, and you'll never improve, and you'll never have an idea the next time you do it as well. So I've had so many ideas for the next time I'll do something by watching something back and thinking, I just didn't do that. And if I'd done that, then that would have been better. Or, I see you holding a notebook there. Sometimes there'll be something I forgot to do on a Saturday that I can revisit on a Sunday notebook, which is useful. But you have to watch the Saturday back and then cross-compare it to your notes and say, I forgot to do that.
So this is one of the first times, it is the first time I've ever brought a notebook into the back of this van. I've even tried to write with the expensive £5 pen from WH Smith's away because I didn't have one. Okay. Ben's notebook on the front of it. But the reason I bought this is I wanted it to trigger so many questions about one of the things that I love about what you do. I'm going to start with my first one, which is, do you remember your first notebook? Like, did you, because next to when you see Ted's notebook, even if you ask ChatGPT to write something, it says producer. When creative, did you come up with the idea of Ted's notebook?
Does it say producer Ted Kravitz?
It says next to notebook, producer of Notebook.
Who, me?
Yes.
Oh, thank heaven for that. Yes, I mean, it's the only thing that I have sort of, complete control over. Well, not complete, but nearly.
But did you have that concept to do that? Do you think, this would be really good to do this?
No, because in chapter, it's one of the penultimate ones, which is called Ted's Notebook in here, where I give all the details on, here we go. It is chapter 18, Ted's Notebook. I give you the full details of what it was. So it wasn't my idea. It wasn't my idea for the format that it's in, and it wasn't my idea for the name, and I don't even buy my own notebooks. So which one should we go for first? It started as a written column on the ITV Sport website from my then editor, Simon Strang, who said, look, there must be things that you write in here that you don't get to put on TV. Why don't we not waste them? You put them into a little written column for the ITV website. So I used to do that, 500 words or so. And then I carried that on from the BBC when I moved to the BBC. But then the deputy editor, Andrew Benson, who's still on BBC Radio 5's coverage, very good journalist, said, we like that, but well, how about doing a video blog? Because it was getting harder and harder with the more races to actually get my copy into him on time, and he wanted it quite timely after the race. And I was often at a back-to-back race or whatever. And he said, look, why don't you just put it into a video blog and we'll just record it after the race. You can do it to camera. I said, okay, fine. And he said, but well, I can't call it Ted's Notebook, so we'll call it From the Pit Lane with Ted Kravitz. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. And so that was when it was a video blog. So that was one of the first ones. I think it was in Monza in 2009, 2010 was probably the first video one. And then developed, keep going. And then when I joined Sky Sports F1 in 2012, Martin Turner, who was the executive producer, said, I like your Paddock ramble. I'm going to turn it into a proper TV program. So 2 parts, 12 minutes each, 24 minutes running time. But I don't want to call it From the Pit Lane with Ted Kravitz. It's too long. It barely won't even fit on a TV screen. Have you got any other names? And I said, how about Ted's Notebook? He said, Ted's Notebook, great idea. Good name. Where'd you get that from? Not knowing that it was the name of the original written column from 2001 till 2008. So that's where it came from. But it's
When do you start making the notes in the notebook over a weekend? So everything that goes into there, we only see it from the point of the video beginning to the end, and your thoughts on it. But when does that notebook actually come together?
Thursday. Well, on the flight out, I'll make some notes of things that I want to say.
Start by putting all the teams down and giving a gap for each one.
No. It'll just be random stuff. And then on a Thursday, when all the driver interviews start, I'll just put, Hulk, Porter. It all goes in reverse order in the pit lane. So Sauber's always first. Then it's Williams. This is the order reversed from the constructors from the previous year. Then Williams guys are next. And then Racing Bulls, and then Haas, and then Alpine, and then Aston Martin, and then Mercedes, and then Red Bull, and then Ferrari, and then McLaren are last in the day. So you'll fill up the notebook with all of these things that the drivers had said, not only to you, but also to other reporters, which is gold, because they're not on our cameras a lot of the time. We're not putting that out, but it's still good information that people might be interested in, or hopefully they'll be interested in. And if I'm interested in, that's the point of how I sort of think about people might be interested in. And then gets to practice, then I'll be writing some ideas about bits that they want me to do before practice, some ideas, some thoughts. I'll read all the team previews, and if there's a little line in there about, there was a line from Singapore recently where I think Carlos called it, it's all about being uncomfortable with being comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I wrote that down on my notebook. I stole it, and I used it at the green light on Sunday evening before the race. So I'll go back through my notebook and say, that was a good line. I'm going to reuse and recycle. It's like repurposing these lines.
Can I repurpose that line for a minute? Because I think it's a perfect entry into a note that I've got that I want to ask you about.
Yes.
Because being comfortable with the uncomfortable, I'd love to ask you something that must have been uncomfortable, which is from my favourite chapter of your book, from everything that everybody has seen. One word, and I don't want to go into the details, to be fair, because you must be like a driver getting fed up after a race, fed up with it. But one word caused a team to be very angry with yourself and Sky Sports, and ultimately, from the media's perspective, began boycotting, even doing interviews with Sky Sports, etc. Can I get into the actual emotion? Can I get into the actual emotion behind you? Because what we see from you on camera is excitement with things that happen in the pit lane, sometimes shock from things that happen in the pit lane. But we don't see the other side of the person and the thing that they have to deal with when the camera goes off. So, what does a situation like that, when it happens and it kind of blows up, one in 20 year situation, which if you go back to my dad's statement, you can't keep everybody happy all of the time. But what does that do to you the aftermath of that?
Well, you'll have to read F1 Insider to find out what happened with all of that. Well, it doesn't do that much to me. I mean, I work for Sky Sports. They were very supportive. I don't think what I said was a particularly rogue view at the time. I think it was clipped up out of context on social media.
But that happens. That's something that you have to deal with, and that can create the snowball going down a hill.
Yes.
And that's why I ask it, because the actual view of me as a fan, do you think obscured from the actual gravity of the situation inside where you were?
No, I think the gravity wasn't particularly grave, and I think it was snowballed out of all proportion. So it was just differences of opinion in terms of what they thought I was talking about versus what I was actually talking about.
Do you think if that was said at any weekend in the future, 2 years ahead, referring back to a situation, it would have been a completely different outcome to what happened?
I think
because of what the moment was.
I think it was just a miscommunication, really. I mean, if you're asking specifically, I think I was saying that, that Lewis Hamilton should have won if the rules of the FIA as they were understood should have been applied, then Lewis Hamilton should have won the Abu Dhabi 2021 Grand Prix, which is not a rogue view.
And I was actually fascinated and learned about the previous race director from Michael Massey when I was reading chapter 20 of this.
Charlie Whiting.
Yeah, which actually put quite an interesting perspective on all that for me.
Okay.
I didn't actually know prior to reading that.
About Charlie Whiting?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was something that obviously that situation as an F1 fan, nearly every race, I used to have these F1 Sundays. We used to call it Brown Food F1 Sunday.
It was great.
Chat with the lads. Where we on a Sunday sit on the sofa and we were only allowed turkey dinosaurs and chicken nuggets and anything that went in the oven.
Great.
And we'd sit and watch the F1. But even in all the races after that, we always spoke about that infamous race.
Right. Yes.
It's actually really interesting. That piece on Charlie Whiting, who's the previous race director before Michael Massey.
Yes.
That is the first time I've had context added to a situation that's changed my view on it.
Oh, okay.
For a long time.
Yeah, so Charlie Whiting was a legend, and I'd encourage you to if anyone is same as you isn't familiar with Charlie Whiting, go and have a look online and look at some videos that he used to do. He's a very gentle man, but strong words, softly spoken, had the respect of everybody. And we weren't sadly passed away a couple of years, 3 years before Abu Dhabi 21. I think he passed away in 2018. He would. I mean, I don't know what he would have done. He would have presumably followed the rule, which was that after the lapped cars are released to go around to join the end of the back of the pack, then Rule 48.12 says that the race will restart the following lap, which was the rule that was unexpectedly not followed by Michael Massey. But I think we all know the story. It's in there. The Abu Dhabi is treated in there. But I mean, going back to your original question, I think the Red Bull situation was that the Verstappen camp and Red Bull thought that I was saying that it was them who had done anything wrong, which maybe I just wasn't clear enough by saying that it was Michael Massey and the FIA who had not unusually not stuck to their rules and had prevented Lewis being an 8-time world champion, which had they stuck to their rules as understood by everybody, then Lewis Hamilton would have won the championship, but they didn't. It was nothing to do with Red Bull. So I think that was the element of the misunderstanding. I should have been more specific and said that it was the FIA, Michael Massey.
But we all make mistakes. And we all word things in ways that make sense to us, but sometimes when they're actually taken in by others, it can be completely different.
I mean, listen, it's just the way these things are clipped up. I'm sure if they'd seen, the thing, it wasn't actually that controversial thing.
Totally understand where you're coming from with that, and it's great context. But like, what I want to understand is the bit that you don't see behind the lens that actually helps us gain some context of how you deal with that, because it's all part of what you do is having to deal with that kind of stuff. Like, after that's happened, do you think mentally, right, he's a bit angry at me at the minute because he doesn't understand what happened, or they're a bit angry at me. Do you go into, I have to solve this problem? mode? Like, I should speak to them. Should I wait a little bit of time and let the dust blow over? Do you actively think about almost the recovery of it a little bit as soon as something like that happens, or do you just let the course of time play out?
Well, I was quite bemused about the whole thing. No, I mean, we had a chat. We had a discussions with Red Bull, and I spoke to Max about it, and we came to a amicable conclusion where I completely understood his point of view. That wasn't actually about what I said, but about the social media pile-ons that happen. I mean, pile on, not a electricity pile-on, that happened to him and his friends and his family. And I said, look, I completely get that. You know, it happens to the same to everybody. And he was saying, you know, why do you have to go there? And I said, I wasn't. I was just riffing on a plot idea for Brad Pitt's F1 movie. And so, you know, we had it out, and we had a discussion, and we had it out. If I say that now, you're going to clip this out, and people are going to say, oh, Ted and Max had it out. We had a friendly discussion about something, and we understood our opinions. And then I spoke to him last weekend, interviewed him last weekend. So
these episodes are brought to you from the back of my studio van, which we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, but it really would mean so much to the channel and mean that I can keep improving the guests that you see coming on going forward if you could just hit that subscribe button for me. It's totally free. I know a lot of you are listening to this rather than even watching it, but if you could just pick up your phone, tap that subscribe button, it makes the world of difference. Over 64% of our viewers are not subscribed to the channel, and it would really help me if you could. So thank you.
As someone that loves everything that happens around Formula One and how individual moments have such a huge consequence sometimes in Formula One, just like that itself, do you believe, with your generalised view of everything Formula One, that Abu Dhabi 2021 was better or worse for Formula One in the position it's in now?
Was it better or worse for Formula One? Gosh, well, I take you back to the end of the Abu Dhabi chapter, and I would recommend that you all get this to actually read what I properly say about it.
And I will put a link to the description and the bio to be able to go with that expert. And I genuinely do mean, because I rarely do say this, guys, I genuinely do mean in chapter 20, and I don't read a lot of books.
Right. There is an audio book where I read it to you.
But I flowed through chapter 20 last night, sat doing research like I've never done before.
Good.
So, but because it added so much that I wasn't aware of to the story in my head.
That makes me very happy. Thank you very much. So I put here, F1 has never been more popular, so it's difficult to judge to what extent the events of that night in Abu Dhabi damaged the image and integrity of the sport. So let's think about that for a bit. F1 has never been more popular, has it?
No.
So, but people weren't happy with what the events of Abu Dhabi did to the integrity of the rules and the way they were applied, understandably.
But they're now applied in a better way.
I don't know. I suppose, yeah.
Or would there still be a lot more?
No, I mean, we have
wibbly wobbly if Abu Dhabi hadn't have happened. He was still in charge of that team.
I don't know. We've had 2 race directors since then. I think it's a bit of a more conservative race direction. You look at how many red flags are thrown these days, you know, for leaves on track or something. And then I end it where I say, just like the other great stories that make up F1's fascinating history, though, we shouldn't be afraid to talk about it. And I think that's really what it comes down to, whether it's, going back to your original question, whether it's just, you know, teams wanting to influence media people, reporters, journalists, and that's what it's about. It's about influence, trying to put their point across, trying to defer any criticism, minimize any negativity around them, which is all completely natural and understanding. It's you know, it's putting pressure on people. They can do that. That's just part of the game. You have to take that as understand it as part of the game. But the moment we stop talking about things and communicating and understanding people's point of views and just talking person to person, you know, in a mature way, the moment we stop doing that, then we're really in trouble. And so that's what you always end up doing in any case in Formula One when someone's not happy with what you've said. And there'll always be And actually, you'll always get to a better understanding of that person or that team by having a subsequent discussion, because you'll understand where they're coming from.
When you messaged a family member, loved one, or maybe spoke to them in person and said, by the way, I'm just about to get in a Eurofighter Typhoon,
Right, yes.
and go upside down in the sky in the air with one of the drivers that I ramble on down the pit lane with occasionally for a piece to camera. What's their reaction?
No, well, I was actually on holiday in Suffolk at the time. I think it was half term, and we've been going up to it. So there'd been some training and medical things. So they all knew about that. So, but I fly little planes for a hobby anyway. So they chose me.
You were a great candidate.
Yeah, well, they chose me. The producers, they could have had anyone. Simon Lazenby could have done it, or Anthony, or Karun, or or Bernie, or or Natalie, or Rachel could have done it. Anyone could have done it. There is another pilot. I wasn't flying the plane myself. I was a group captain, Billy Cooper, who's the Coningsby station commander, who very kindly took me for a ride. And George Russell. So they were doing it as it was a part of, with the RAF and the Mercedes team, to try and get more people into science, technology, engineering and maths, STEM subjects. And it was a thing where they were going to take up George Russell. And then because he was going with Lieutenant Commander Matt Brighty, who does the Eurofighter display, or did it at the time, he had to have a wingman who was captain, group captain, Billy Cooper. And so then I went in the back, but it was great because I had to fit in. I mean, it probably would have been better for Anthony Davidson to do it, or Karun, because they're racing drivers and they're racing driver size. So I had to get the G trousers on, which actually stops you from passing out. I used to play rugby, so I've got sort of rugby players' thighs, and trying to get these G trousers on was actually the hardest thing of the whole sortie. Once I got these G trousers on, and the helmet which fitted, and then everything was good from there. So
is that a moment that makes
great.
you think that you almost could forget the cameras are even rolling, because you just,
No.
I can't believe what is going on now? Do you ever step out of that?
Because there's an interesting shot in here in the pictures section, whereby I'll either put it on that one,
Overlay.
where you can see that I'm on the helmet. There is a tinted visor, and then there is a clear visor. So there's the tinted visor and there's the clear visor. So all throughout, it was a bright sunny day, even though it doesn't look, it's a bit cloudy taking off from Coningsby there. So that the cameras could see that it was me and George. Obviously, if we go up there and we got the tinted visor down, it's better for the sun glare, but it could be anyone.
Yeah.
It could be Tom Cruise behind that, That's why if you watch Top Gun, he's always got the visor up. And then some of the enemies in the Sukhois or whatever, the MiGs, have got their visors down, because you don't need to see the baddie's eyes, but you do need to see Tom Cruise's eyes. So you had to think about things that you'll be watching Top Gear in a completely different light now, Top Gun in a completely different light now. So you always have to think, and that's why when I'm doing any of these stunts, I'm saying not that it was a stunt, I'm just saying these things with drivers. Primary consideration is that you're making a TV feature. You're not up there to have a fun, jolly around in a Eurofighter. You're there to make a TV feature, to make a connection with George Russell, to understand how the G forces in a fighter plane feel, so you can get something to like the lateral G forces a racing driver will, then the up and down, the vertical G forces that you're feeling that a racing driver doesn't feel, and then relating George back to that. George is quite tall, 6'1", so he felt a bit of the blood coming out of his head, which Alex Albon had as well on a fighter jet he did in the US. But then I'm a bit more stocky, and so I didn't feel that at all. And then you're tensing yourself, the G trousers are expanding, forcing all the blood back into your stomach and then back up to your head. So you're always thinking about the end result, which is the TV feature. So we went supersonic that day. I don't really even remember it, but we were over the North Sea. And you think, well, I would have quite liked to enjoy that, but I was busy kind of making the bits that I knew I'd need for the TV feature.
What I'm trying to get a little bit of then is, you're so calm and logical. I can see the way that you think, and professional is a great word to describe you.
Right.
that I'm trying to look for those moments inside one of the most complex, exciting and exhilarating sports that even if I was interviewing the Ted of 30 years ago sat opposite would make him go, oh my God, did I really fucking do that? No, that wasn't me. There's no way that was me. Like, do you get that come over you? Or are you just kind of like this straight cut, everything super professional?
You're making me feel guilty for not doing that.
But do you think that's why you do such a good job at what you do?
No, because I try to. If you don't have that, if you were just to go through, I think, Formula One and say, oh, there's a car, there's another car, he won a race, he won a championship, well done, then it'd be pretty boring for your viewer. And so I try to allow myself to get excited about the right time. But like Murray Walker and chapters, 2, 3, 4 are kind of, it's almost like it's experiences with Murray Walker and Martin Brundle in the commentary box. So chapter 3, Murray and Martin show. Chapter 4 is about Jerez 97, about Jacques Villeneuve with Murray Walker again. Chapter 5 is Murray's last season. Some of the chapters are a bit of a kind of, memento of working with Murray. If he had gears he would go to in commentary. David Croft has gears as well. So if you were to deliver everything at that sixth gear, which was, wow, I don't believe what I'm seeing.
Is that like, for argument's sake, first 30 seconds?
No, that's when an overtake is, and through goes Hamilton. Right. If you were to do the whole race in fifth or sixth gear, it would be exhausting for the viewer. So you can't do that. The trick is choosing or reminding or identifying the right time to give that boyish or girlish, if that's a word, childish excitement. And so, oh, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. You give that at the right time and it has much more impact than if you're just, cool, look, tyres. Oh, wow, look at car, look how quickly he's going. Then people just won't live with you through that. So it's picking the moments right, in a good way. Every
time I've had someone from the world of F1 sit opposite me in the van and we've spoken about the characters that are on the grid and around the grid, for me, I always ask about Martin Brundle and David Croft, because the way you guys speak about Murray is how my generation view Crofton and Marty. Martin sat in the box doing that commentary because they are our Murray Walk. The way that Crofton can speak so fast and stop, and then Martin comes in, it's like this perfect duet of speaking and knowing exactly who the other person is constantly. But what made Murray so special to you guys?
Firstly, his voice sounded like an engine, so an incredible sort of God-given voice that it could actually go up there, and it was exciting, and it was full of passion and tone, and he could come up. And then it was having the right phrase at the right moment. This is almost unbelievable. It was the way he would slow it down sometimes, and Crofty's very good at this as well. And it's like, this is the big one, and not try and, again, bombard you with words and make it just exhausting. Because if you're sitting at home on a sofa and you're just watching, you want to be sort of taken on a little bit of a journey, don't you? And Crofty and Martin do that. And Murray was great at that. He was a lovely man as well, just to be around. Didn't tend to have a crossword about anybody. And then when somebody did do something that would disappoint him, he was like, oh, well, I don't believe, he did that. It's like everyone was like, oh, well, Murray, So, who would have thought? So there was an innocence to him as well, which was very appealing.
Do you think doing the live commentary is one of the hardest jobs to do in Formula One in terms of the presenting side of it? Other than Brundle's grid walk?
Yeah, being a presenter I find quite difficult, and I have nothing but respect for Natalie Pinkham, Simon Lazenby, Rachel Brooks when she presents, Georgie Thompson, Georgie Ainsley, who is one of the best presenters that I've worked with, Steve Ryder before in ITV, Jake Humphrey as well. What they do to remember all of their lines, and their short-term memory has to be absolutely brilliant. And then the moment they give that line and we go to a feature, they can go, it's like a drag and drop of that file into the trash because then they won't need to use that line anymore, but it needs to be perfect. They need to remember it and say it perfectly and then get out. Commentators don't have to do that. Commentators can explain what they mean. They're not having to address the camera at the same time. I'm not having to do that. I can write something down. The camera's not on me. I can read it out, which I do in the notebook. I basically just read out what I've written. It is much harder being a presenter than a commentator. That's not to say that the commentators don't do a brilliant job. But for me, it's harder to be a presenter.
So what is the hardest part for you? What is the hardest part of doing what you do?
Well, when they tell me to present a program, like, really, do I have to? So I do this program now called Paddock Uncut on a Thursday that we kind of restarted. We used to do it, and then we took a break from it, and then we're back doing it. And it's like a podcast. So it's like what you do here, but there are cameras and it's being broadcast live. And so last week I said to Anthony Davis and Jamie Chadwick, I said, look, don't worry about it. It's like a pod. We're just filming it at the same time. It's okay. And then Jamie's talkback pack failed halfway through. And I was like, oh, you're right. She was like, oh, yeah, I can't hear. I said, oh, you don't need to hear. She says, well, I need to be able to hear the interviews. Oh, yeah, you do. Okay, can we just get a different battery for Jamie? And so we disconnected her battery pack. And this was all on TV. So it's hard presenting a program, getting it all done.
That's
and then
annoying.
Why?
Fatigue is hard.
Right.
And what I want to get into is over the 20 plus years that you've been doing this, have you had a moment that's made you go, maybe it's time for rugby. Maybe I'll go to presenting rugby. Is there anything that's ever nearly removed you from Formula One?
What fatigue in terms?
Like in terms of the amount of races, the amount of travelling, everything. Or are you just like calm?
It's not hard. It's not hard.
So you've never had a toughest moment and a best moment?
Well, it's not hard. I mean, sure, but it's not. No, it's not in terms of there's too many races or anything. I could do 6 more races.
So what is the hardest part of doing what?
Gosh.
What's the one that makes you a bit stressed?
Such a simple question. I've never actually thought about it.
Because if we don't add context,
right?
Context. One of my favourite words is context. Because I think it's so powerful.
Yes, of course,
and it can change the outcome of anything. If we don't add context, all the people listening and wondering will think, "Oh, it's just well easy what Ted does." There, it's just like that stress that I get of this and this and this in life is just, that's just because I do what I do.
I know. I'm sure there is, but I just hadn't thought about it really. I mean, the best bit is when. Can I do the best bit first?
Yeah.
The best bit is when, as a team of broadcast professionals, we hit on a story or there's something big happens, and we all just step up and go for that story, and we get I'm in the pits. I get the interviews we need. The analysts are humming, Anthony, they're giving their best reactions. Anthony's going through everything on the SkyPad, or Karun's going through everything on the SkyPad, hitting all of the marks, explaining to the viewers. It feels like you're in a V12 engine and it's just running at 12,000 RPM. And it's like the engine, you can feel it. The whole production lifts, and you come off air and you're like, we got everything out there. Nobody went home, or nobody at home wanted for any information. We got it all out there. Things will come out in the next 3 or 4 days. We covered them all at the time. That's so satisfying, working as a team. And I imagine it must be as a driver when you win a race and you know that everybody in your team delivered their maximum and they were perfect. You were perfect in the car and you won the race. And it's really satisfying. And that's where I can relate a little bit to racing drivers, because that's one of the best things. Worst thing, I don't know. I mean, you get sort of frustrations with race stoppages. There was that practice session in Las Vegas, year 1, where they had to weld down all the drain covers, and we finally got going at 3 a.m. That was a pretty low point for everybody, because we were already,
not a great time for
we were already on UK time, which was 10 hours. It was already, what we've done all right
podcasts over there going
we've
back
done
and
all
forth.
right.
The worst time zone difference.
That's right. And so we were effectively on Hawaii or Guam time from GMT. And those hours when we were just sitting, waiting for this practice session to start, I thought, oh, this is a pretty low moment. But then, I think back to it, with sort of fondness. I mean, COVID was a low moment for everybody. It was a tough moment, and leaving Australia, going back and not knowing when we were ever going to get going again. And then you could see this, so much suffering in all these places that we were going back to. And you thought, we shouldn't be doing F1 as a bit of sport. It's a bit of fun. It's right that we shouldn't be doing it. But then going back, returning to racing after COVID, in July of that year was a very positive moment.
Is there a lot of people that had a lot of different opinions about whether that should be happening or not, that occasionally would cause clashes?
Well, I mean, Lewis Hamilton, and that first, which I write about in chapter 17, I think, Lewis Hamilton came famously to the Australian Grand Prix and said, I don't know what we're doing here. So many people in such a space when there's all this COVID happening in Europe and in Italy. It's chapter 19, Surviving Driving, is about that. And somebody said to Lewis, why are we here? He said, well, cash is king, implying that as long as the financial wheels keep going, then it doesn't matter if there's a worldwide pandemic. Now, he's proved to be absolutely right. When the cash flow races stopped happening, then money stopped going to the teams because there wasn't any money coming in from holding the race. And many teams almost folded, because they had to keep paying their staff. They couldn't just lay the staff off. All the costs were still going out the door, but they had no money coming in. So it was a really tough time for everybody. But no, it was only some people who thought that we shouldn't be there in the first place. But Formula One reacted very quickly, and we shut down like everybody else. So that was a tough time.
Do you work to live or live to work? Do you think you'll be doing this as long as you possibly can because you love it?
I don't. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the F1 bubble and lose perspective. So I don't live to work. I think it's dangerous in Formula One. You can become obsessed with being in the paddock. You can't have a life outside it. You can't feel that you're happy outside it. There are people who get who sort of go native in a sense of wanting to could never leave the circus. They join the circus. They just need to be part of the circus. And maybe I was like that in my my younger days.
Laser focused to recognise that and have perspective then, and just see it in your own note.
I think it helps being a broadcaster in that you're not winning or losing as a team. You're not with a group of 60, 65 men and women who are going out and fighting for race wins and championships and getting that joy when you win and that despair when you don't. Because to us in TV,
that's what does it.
We don't mind. It makes no difference to me who wins or loses.
That's actually really profound, because we speak about this as YouTubers. This is like a different perspective in TV, but a lot of the content goes out on YouTube. And on YouTube, we have this thing, although I've put my phone in airplane. Oh, there we go. It's a great reference. And every video you put out, it gets ranked as a place of your last 10. So obviously 1 is really good. In fact, look who's number 1. Look who's at the top there.
Karun Chandhok.
So you get ranked between 1 and 10. And that is, in a YouTuber sense, the same as a team winning or losing races.
Yep.
And it can really, especially if you're uploading a lot and working really hard for something, have a huge impact on your kind of emotional swings. But it's really interesting, dear. Like, what you do is almost in that sweet spot of you're just kind of an observer.
Yep.
And that's actually probably a way of living a lot kind of much happier and more content life.
Yes, I hope that explains why you seem to have sort of concluded that I was a bit of an emotional flatline and calm is what you said. But yes, in that we genuinely, and people think, you have your favorites, you don't want this person to win, or you're sad when that person wins, or you're happy when that person wins. Can you imagine how emotionally draining that would be if you were constantly battling your own sort of personal feelings about people winning 24 races and all of these. Going to Austin next, we've got sprint races.
Do.
And I would barely be able to do the job I can do if I then had to factor in.
We'll try being a Ferrari fan.
Yeah, whether I'm personally, gutted about a result.
I said to my friend at the weekend, I said, being a Ferrari fan these days is the equivalent of supporting Manchester United. It seems like nothing but disappointment, but it'll turn it around at some point.
Around. Yeah, good old Ferrari. I mean, they're magic. They're a magic team. And that's why, I'm happy that there's a Ferrari on the cover of my book, because there's nothing like them. You still think, McLaren are celebrating 10 World Championships, aren't they, this week, having come back from Singapore. Second only to Ferrari with 16. they've still got another 6 Constructors' Championships to win until they're still on Ferrari's level. So, yeah, I know what you mean.
You talk about magic there, and I just bring it back to my own personal. I'm very lucky that I've got to own quite a few crazy cars over my life, and at the minute I've got a McLaren. And just seeing them win the Constructors' Championship at the weekend, it's amazing what Formula One does do for like the true petrol head as well behind the wheel of the car. Because you do now, I look at that badge, and that badge pings back something into my eyes that's different to what it did pre them winning this championship. And I know they've got the heritage, I know they've got the history, but you get a sense of the guys that worked on this, the current guys that worked on this were champions, were winners. And it does make quite a big difference, I think, to Formula One, not just in that perspective, but in perspective of absolutely everybody that watches you through the lens of the camera or reads the lines in your book.
Oh, interesting.
So Ted, I'd like to conclude by telling the audience that I will leave a link to in the description. But very nice and clear to several places that it's available. Is it available to purchase yet?
It is, yes. It's on Amazon as part of their deals, are doing it for half price at the moment. So if you want a reasonable gift for Christmas, it's half price on Amazon at the moment. If you want to support your local bookstores, then of course that's your choice, and you can buy it for the price it is. But it would make a suitable Christmas present if anybody who's interested in F1. I hope people like it. It took a while to write. I put a lot of heart and soul into it. I haven't shied away, I think, with Abu Dhabi chapter as an example from anything noteworthy or controversial.
What's your favourite sentence in that book?
It's probably the last one, actually, which is the point of calling it F1 Insider. Because
was there nearly a point to call it Ted's Notebook?
Yeah, but that's a TV program now, so there's kind of no point calling it a book, calling a book Ted's Notebook. But the idea about F1 Insider is that everything I do is to make my viewers feel like F1 insiders. So that's the kind of play on, and I only talk about it at the end. So the last sentence is, I'll do my utmost to bring the pit lane into your front room, connect you with the drivers, take you behind the scenes, and deliver as much access, news, gossip, information, and entertainment from the paddock as possible. Come to think of it, everything you need to be an F1 insider. So that's the idea, is that it's the play on the play of the title is actually that I'm making everybody that watches and reads feel like an F1 insider. And if at least I can do that to whatever degree, then I'll be very happy.
Well, Ted, thank you for giving some insider insight to the F1 insider today in the back of my van in the middle of London. I've never done a podcast in the middle of London with the back doors of my van wide open and the cover up. And the first podcast I ever did in the middle of London was actually with Gunther Steiner.
Okay.
So there's been a few now here, but none quite like this. So Ted, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you,
back
Ben.
of my van studio. Pleasure meeting you. And if you enjoyed this episode today, please make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to check if you're subscribed to Road to Success. And of course, if you're listening on Spotify or streaming, make sure you follow our platforms too. And we will see you with 2 uploads a week very shortly.